name is Sojourner Ahebe, and I'm a Wales International Fellow this summer, and I was asked to pick 3 places that have had a profound impact on my time here in Paris. So again, right now we're here at Père Lachaise Cemetery, and I'm actually sitting in the section in which the revered and famous Richard Wright in his crematorium is located. So why did I pick this place as somewhere that had a profound impact on me? Well, for starters, Richard Wright was an African-American writer. He published many works, and he was really interested in race and identity as it related to African-Americans, and his stories are some of the most profound encounters with literature that I've ever had. They tell the truth, they're honest, they're candid, and most importantly, they're stories for and about Black peoples, especially Black diasporic peoples. So it was especially exciting to see that there was a space here in Paris for him, to celebrate him and to remember him. He found a lot of freedom here in Paris as a writer, as an African-American, as an African-American expat especially. So I'm always thinking about those themes when I'm in Paris, especially for African-American writers, because a lot of times they couldn't find publishing opportunities or just opportunities or spaces in which they could be free and could be honest and could tell the stories they wanted to tell. So the fact that Richard Wright found Paris and was able to tell his stories for us is really important. So I decided that this would be one of the places that I would reflect on. Hey, so right now I'm outside the Shakespeare & Co. bookstore. You can see it right behind me. This is a bookstore that I've come to time and time again during my stays, various stays in Paris. And it's also a bookstore that's been frequented by English speaking writers. This summer I had the immense pleasure of coming to Shakespeare & Co. and hearing Zadie Smith and Robin Cost-Lewis, who's a poet, read here right outside of the bookstore as the audience sort of crowded around them. It was really exciting. I had been reading Zadie Smith for a really long time. She talks a lot about like race, mixed race, like identity, and so that really sort of follows her throughout her literature. But she was also joined by a poet named Robin Cost-Lewis. She knows through research that her family, part of her family, was slaveholding. She's an African-American woman. So her book was sort of dealing with like that uncomfortable fact of knowing that her family or part of her family actually owned slaves and what it means to carry that as a Black woman. So it was a really powerful night, just 2 Black women like really sharing their stories and being honest. So I decided to include Shakespeare & Co. as the second sort of destination, as one of the places that has had a profound impact on my stay in Paris and has really showed me the profound impact that Black peoples in Paris have had on the city throughout time. Hi again. Okay, so I guess you're wondering where we are right now. It's not very apparent, but I'm actually sitting on a bench in the Jardin du Luxembourg. So a lot of people don't know this, but the Jardin du Luxembourg actually has a memorial within the garden that's actually dedicated to slaves in the former French colonies. The memorial is really interesting. So the statue itself is actually a collection of 3 chains, and then the chain at the very top is kind of broken, I guess, sort of to imagine what freedom could look like if we were to put it in a visual medium, or it's kind of working on a metaphorical level. But what's really interesting also, right next to it, there's kind of like a written homage, and it's basically like saying, it basically says, we are sort of indebted and like thankful to former Black slaves or slaves in the former colonies. They played a significant impact in terms of like contributing great acts of humanity and liberty, and they're sort of like really important for, I guess, the nation state and the way sort of France has developed. And so these people have almost like contributed to that sort of legacy, which is really interesting to think about. And especially as I'm always thinking about, how do we commemorate slavery? How do we commemorate great acts of violence, especially great acts of violence that have happened to a collective people? And it's also really important to think about how that trauma actually still travels within communities that are still alive to this day, because there's still people who are carrying that trauma. So the question becomes, what's the point of a memorial like this? What is it actually doing for those peoples, for their ancestors? What is it doing for their trauma? Like, France is still contributing to a lot
of those problems. Francophone West Africa is one of those places you could look at as a case study. So really, is the memorial just about having some public sort of space for saying sorry, but like, what is it actually going to be doing? Is it going to move people to action? So I guess those are just some questions that I had about the memorial when I saw it. It's interesting because it was moving in one sense, because it was surprising to see that such a space even existed in Paris because of such a violent and racist legacy here. But then again, I wasn't very moved because I felt like something that was so violent and that happened for such a long time maybe deserves something of greater stature. But it has had a profound impact on me in the sense that it's given me these questions. And as an art maker, a poet, a filmmaker, it's going to really make me more conscious of thinking about how do I tell stories of colonized peoples or enslaved peoples, and how do I give them that respect and that justice that they deserve.